I thank you all for taking your seats quickly and quietly. The recess is now over. My watch says it is now 2. I hereby call the Texas House of Representatives to order. Now, next on the agenda, according to the docket, is House Bill 4256, relating to the jurisdiction in criminal matters involving allegations of sexual assault by a member of the state military forces. Right. Is there a proponent for this bill? Yes? All right. Representative Jones, the floor is now open for your opening statements. Hello. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Speaker for yielding me time. This bill, House Bill 4256, is a shorter bill than we're all used to, so I'm going to read it in full, or the meat of the bill. This bill to be entitled as an act, regarding to the prosecution of sexual assault. A criminal case alleging a sexual assault committed by a member of the state military force must be first tried in an appropriate court with jurisdiction over the case. Military court may not try a person subject to this chapter for committing any offense described by subsection A until any state prosecution of the offense is complete. This bill will be enacted immediately upon 2/3 majority in both houses, or without a 2/3 majority will be enacted September 1st, 2017. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Jones. Now the floor is open to debate. Is there any debate on this bill? Representative Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to spend the rest of my time speaking highly in favor of this bill. As many of you know, my father served over 30 years in the military. Most of it was with the U.S. Army, but those first early years were served in the Texas National Guard. From a very young age, he taught me the severity and seriousness that sexual harassment and assault plays in the Army. And I would like to share a story he once told me about the matter. When he was a warrant officer with a little clout behind his name, he was once in a SHARP training, and that is Sexual Harassment / Assault Response and Prevention, or SHARP, program in the Army, a program built to respond to incidents alongside investigators and to combat the culture of sexual misconduct in the Army. This training is required to be taken yearly by soldiers, and during that year's trainings, my father, during the training that year, my father had grown very annoyed with the prevalence of sexual misconduct and how dismissive some of his soldiers were when it came to this, especially with how often they had to do the training. He was also annoyed at how poorly the Army was dealing with this and responding to such incidents because, well, they were still prevalent. He took it upon himself to educate and shaken his soldiers a little bit up, having always been a strong advocate of eliminating this culture and bringing knowledge to it and getting people to take it seriously. You see, my father had a zero tolerance policy to any form of soldiers hurting other soldiers. He asked the Speaker just what would happen if a soldier stabbed another. The Speaker said that the commander would have to initiate an investigation. Then my father, making sure that all the soldiers in the room were listening to this, he asked, what would happen if a soldier was stabbed with a penis? The soldiers were more stunned by my father's bluntness than they were amused by the crassness of his language. The Speaker herself was, well, let's say, flustered, but had to respond honestly. The commander could choose whether to investigate the rape of another soldier. My father then said, so if a soldier is being raped, they should make sure to get roughed up, hurt, ask the rapist to punch them in the face a few times, so just to make sure that the commander was obligated to investigate it. The room went silent. While the Speaker eventually answered, yes, if the victim wanted to ensure the incident was investigated, they would need physical indicators that the assault took place. Now, I do know that this is, of course, the U.S. Army, big army in the sky. They're not the state military. But to me, it shows just how much just how strong these incidents can be, just how much of a prevalence there is, and that they are not to be taken lightly, and that ultimately sometimes they are taken lightly. And for that reason, I strongly support the investigation of such heinous crimes at our state level, and such diligence in the matter. I hope you all vote in favor of House Bill 4256.
Representative Smith.
Mr. Speaker, will the proponent yield to a series?
Will the proponent yield? Yes, I will yield. Representative Smith, you may now ask your questions.
Do you have any relevant statistics you could provide on the rate of sexual assault and misconduct in the Texas military forces?
Yes, thank you. That's actually a great question. In 2015 alone, there were over 18,000 sexual assaults in Texas, with over 19,000 reported victims and over 19,000 offenders. 0.27% of these crimes were committed against a worker by a coworker. And the highest age group affected by those was 15 to 24, the most prevalent age group for the military. In 2016, the national military had over 6,000 assaults reported, almost double the rate of just 4 years ago in 2012. Although I could not locate the exact statistics for the Texas military, I assure you from the numbers that I can find, these horrific acts are happening in some of the most prestigious organizations in our state. Representative Wilson. Now, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to spend the remainder of my time speaking strongly out against this bill. Well, of course, I recognize the importance of investigating these matters, and the severity of these actions, absolutely. I feel that the decision to investigate these crimes, of course, and the jurisdiction should remain within the Texas military. The Texas military should be held accountable to themselves and remain combat ready. These only affect a small group, and the Texas military should not be required to waste time on such a small group when they have much more important tasks like protecting our borders and providing hurricane relief. And if a soldier is good at his job, I want him on the front lines when crisis rears its ugly head instead of defending himself against possibly false allegations. The proponent himself does not even have the proper statistics on these crimes and may be blowing their rates out of proportion. As I said, these crimes are of course a large issue, but an effective military is much more important for all Texans. I urge you all to vote against House Bill 4256. Representative Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to propose an amendment to House Bill 4256.
Is there a second?
Second!
The motion is seconded. The floor now moves to debate on the amendment presented by Representative Johns on House Bill 4256. Representative Johns, you can now propone your amendment.
Yes. Thank you. I'm strongly in favor of passing this bill, and I would like to propose an amendment to line 10 of the bill to now read state military forces, comma, and United States military forces, comma, if the crime occurred in the state of Texas, comma, must first be tried, etc., etc. I firmly believe that change can happen, and it needs to start somewhere. I hope you vote yes on this amendment for holding offenders more accountable. And holding our military more accountable. Thank you.
The floor is now open to debate on Representative Johns' proposed amendment to House Bill 4256. Is there any debate on this amendment? Representative Edwards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to spend the remainder of my time speaking out against this amendment on the basis that compelling the investigation of a crime that occurred in Texas, but on federal property, all U.S. military bases are, would be unconstitutional. If this amendment passes, while good-intentioned, would mean the overall bill would fail. Please vote against this amendment. What's that? Oh, yeah. Let me take a look at that. The House of Representatives is trying to make an unconstitutional amendment.
House Bill 4256. Yeah, they're arguing that the state has the authority to pressure the federal government into allowing them to investigate a crime on federal land. I'm going to send a page note to the speaker. Yeah, that's unconstitutional. Attention, I've just received a note from the Attorney General's office in regards to the proposed amendment on the floor, and I've been asked to read it. Regarding the proposed amendment, House Bill 4256, the state of Texas cannot compel an investigation of a crime that occurred on federal property, meaning crimes on U.S. military bases are outside the Texas law, but Texas military bases are inside the law. This amendment would be unconstitutional, but the remainder of the bill, the unedited version, can be signed once it meets all other requirements. And that is from our Attorney General, Alexander. Further, the time has elapsed on the debate of this proposed amendment. We will now move to vote on the proposed amendment to House Bill 4256. All those in favor, please signify by raising your placards and saying aye.
Aye, 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 aye.
All opposed, please signify by raising your placards and saying nay.
Nay, 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 nay.
Obvious minority, motion fails. We will now resume debate on the original bill, House Bill 4256. Now, is there any debate on this bill? Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the proponent yield to a series?
Will the proponent yield? Yes, I yield. Proceed with your questions.
What kind of logistical steps would this act entail? Could you run me through the investigation process under this act?
To answer your question, I would like to reference some previous speakers. The bill would not just cover those in the Texas military force who were assaulted by another member of the Texas military force, but cases where the offender is part of the Texas military force and the victim, no matter if they're affiliated with the Texas military force or not, it would cover these instances. To give the steps more specifically, if the Texas authorities learned of an assault where the alleged offender was a member of the Texas military force and it happened on Texas soil, those would include Texas military bases, they would be able to investigate it before the Texas military force does. If the Texas military learned of such an assault, they would be compelled to report it to Texas investigators before investigating it themselves. And if the Texas state authorities found out, then in both cases, the Texas military force would be compelled to cooperate as much as possible with state authorities in helping their investigation. After such a time in which the investigation and any prosecution by the state was completed, then the Texas military force would be welcome to do their own investigation and take their own court actions. Time has elapsed on debate on House Bill 4256. Would the proponent like closing remarks? Yes, thank you. For my closing remarks, I would like to reference a previous speaker. Although it may be easy to say that these offenses are committed by a small group of bad apples and they only affect a small group of victims, the truth is that these people who are the offenders, they are soldiers of our state and country. We must hold them to the highest standards. And if the numbers are so small, then surely when the crisis comes, we will be just fine with those not under investigation for rape. If the numbers are larger, then what that means is that the offenders are hurting our citizens and even the force that they serve by not only hurting members of the force, but engaging in criminal activity as a member of the force. They are damaging the combat effectiveness of our military and should be punished for it. Even if there are false allegations, which statistically speaking are extremely rare, then having a more diligent system will surely exonerate those that are falsely accused. And while I do understand that my statistics were somewhat lacking, the numbers that I did provide, please know that many, many more victims, for whatever reason they have, which are all valid, oftentimes there are many more victims than those that come forward.
And this is a chance to hold offenders more accountable and to help protect the Texas Military Police Force and all Texans. Thank you. I urge you all to vote yes on this bill, to approve this bill.
We will now move to vote on House Bill 4256. All those in favor, please signify by raising your placards and saying aye.
Aye, 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 aye.
All those opposed, please signify by raising your placards and saying nay.
Nay, 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 nay. Division!
Division is called and recognized. All those in favor, please stand and count off. Majority. Motion passes.